right, welcome back, Coach.
Welcome back. It is a frigid day here in Overland Park, Kansas. It's January 16th. The year is 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. This is episode 742.
742. Is it cold there? I'm looking out here. It's sunny. It doesn't look that cold.
There's not a cloud in the sky, and it looks even brighter because the ground is still covered with snow. But it is definitely one of those times of the year where I feel like this week is like the first week of August, where everyone can't help but tell you what the weather's like. It's so cold. In case you're wondering, it's -20. Memes, pictures, screenshots of the how cold it is, pictures of snow. It's very much like that first week of August where it's like, yeah, still hot here, 120, dew point of 94, and humidity at 167%. And that's what it's like. Yes, it is. It feels like it's cold everywhere. I think every Training Peaks comment I read over the weekend or earlier this week was all about how cold it was. And I can relate. It was like -20, -30. A lot of people I know watched the Chiefs-Dolphins game, and it was that cold. I was shocked there was that many people there, to be honest, but they looked bundled up and ready. But yeah, it's cold.
You just layer up, man.
What's that?
You got to layer up. This is the weekend. This was the weekend or a couple days of the year when I have to turn off Facebook because it snows in Nashville, and like all my old friends just nonstop with the snow pictures. I got to take a break.
We are Nashville.
We are Nashville.
There's new memes, and we believe in Nashville snow. It's what's like there's gonna be new murals on every corner of every bakery and shop in Nashville. We are Nashville snow. Yeah, they got
go
a lot.
hard, man. I know that was the thing. They got about 8 inches, I think, and it was like every single post I saw was Nashville snow.
People are proud of it, man.
I know.
We're proud of it here, but after I think it's been on the ground here, the ground's been covered. I haven't seen a lick of grass in 10 days. And that's just a lot. And I'm ready to be outside. I'm getting cabin fever. Thankfully, the sun is out tomorrow. Looks like it's going to be a little bit warmer. So back to waffles. My dog is getting like, hey, where's the walks? You guys give up on me? Like, I'm getting a little bit overweight. Like, this is just too much. So thankfully, it looks back to getting a little bit warmer tomorrow. Hopefully, it's warmer up for the rest of you. But that's it. It's winter. So if it's where you live, that's what you signed up for. So I'm just hoping that kids go back to school because Hayden is out again today. I'm not even sure. I'm starting to wonder if he's going to have to repeat second grade. As much as they're going to be out of school this year. So hopefully they get that under control and they're back tomorrow. It'd be good for him. It'd be good for us. We hope today's podcast is good for you. If it's your first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Vibes. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. He and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes from the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships and everyone in between involved with the globe. I use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also like to utilize our Facebook group, which I totally spaced on and didn't pop in this week. We like to utilize them for a Q&A session, and I will do that as soon as we are off the podcast today. So my apologies. I'm sure people are on pins and needles for that too. But we like to utilize them for our Q&A sessions, and it's a great group in a sport that can be oftentimes way overcomplicated and way too confusing. It is a solid space to get actionable information, help you avoid some of the pitfalls we've had along our own journeys. But that is it. We have no sponsors. We have no ads, but we do have an agenda, and it's very important, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I was sitting in meditation this morning and trying to come up with a topic, and then you know how you have the thoughts will creep in.
Mm-hmm.
You try to just calm them down, and I was like, oh, no, Robbie's posting Q&A, so I don't have to stress about that. And he forgot.
Dude, why didn't you sold me out? If you had this like epiphany while you were meditating,
forgot.
Why not just hit me up? Like, hit me on the hip, man.
I'm just living in the moment, man. I forgot all about that.
Star 911. I would have known immediately. All right, there's Mike with the page 911. Boom, ooh. Facebook Q&A.
I just opened the curtains, man. Hang on, I got to put on some shades. It is bright out there.
It is, I'm telling you. I'm even making a note right now. Facebook post, right? Yeah. Facebook post. No, it's we do need a Q&A. It's a great time. We're doing a Zoom Q&A for our athletes tomorrow that we do pretty frequently. It's always a lot of questions beginning of the year, a lot of things happening. Races really not that far away, as January feels like it's flying by.
Yeah, that's the one that we got to bring up too.
That January's flying by?
Well, I just said in my part of the email yesterday to the athletes, I was like, yeah, it's really cold out and everything, but for a lot of you, this season is coming quick, Texas or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's kind of time to get your ass off the couch.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that sneaks up on people are like the half marathons and the full marathons. And then those there's a bunch of early season 70.3s this year. Like, I know it doesn't seem that early. Like, we've got quite a few athletes doing Puerto Rico, which is in March. So like in 2 weeks, they're going to say it's next month. And then you got Oceanside, which is super early, Texas, which is super early April. I mean, it is upon us. Like, it's the preparation is here. So if you're an athlete and you're racing, that first quarter of the year, if your shit ain't together, you need to kind of gather yourself a little bit. Take a day if you need it. But outside of that, don't take two, because it's time to get back on board and right the ship. And I got to ask you this, because you brought up early season races. What's the % chance you ever sign up for a race before the month of May?
For the rest of my life?
The rest of your life.
Before May?
Mm-hmm.
15%.
15? That's a lot higher than I was anticipating.
There's, I don't know. I've always had like a weird thing about doing Ironman Texas.
Still time. It's still open, isn't it?
Well, no, it's not happening this year.
No, okay. Just laying it out.
But I'm talking about the next 10 years. There's a 15% chance.
10 years.
It's just everything's gonna have to click. I was thinking hard about it right after Christmas, around New Year's, and
really?
Yeah, I pulled it, but I ended up pulling the Wisconsin trigger.
Oh, so you were waffling? Were you waffling or thinking about doing the double?
Thinking about the double.
Who are you right now?
A rational person, because I didn't do it. I said, I'm pulling back, Well,
I mean, it would have been funny, because then you could have said, shit got real.
Yeah, shit just got real. The double real.
What's the, before we get on the topic for today, what's the green light you would have to get to feel confident enough to sign up for because, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm signed up for Ironman Texas this year. I plan on doing it. It's always had a little bit of, ever since going down there to spectate, it's been one of those, like, I really want to do this race. It feels like a great time. And honestly, for me as a coach, it is the best time. I already suck, generally speaking, at work-life boundaries and making myself a priority and training a priority for myself. But before the race season, like, really gets full bore, which is like mid-May to mid-July, is nuts. Then August is a little bit slower, but now you got Louisville, which is a huge team race this year. And then it's also gangbusters September, October, November. It's kind of like the only not the bright spot, but the best spot to, if you're going to make time. So as a coach, like, that's pretty much it. But that's my green light. What's your green light?
I don't know. What was the question? Green light for what?
To feel confident enough to sign up for an early season race like Ironman Texas.
Oh,
like what ducks have to be in a row? What has to line up perfectly and be like, you know what? It's time for shit to get real. Let's pull the trigger.
Well, since I just moved up here last summer, I haven't found a pool yet, so that might help me. There is a pool in the little town. I haven't hit it yet, so that was one of the scary points for me. Green light, early season. I don't know.
There's not one, I don't think.
I don't think. If Rev 3 comes back to Knoxville, maybe I'll do that.
I can tell you what it is right now.
Oh, that's an end to me. What is it?
Because I have a hard time seeing you doing Texas just because it's a flat course, and you and Arrow for 5.5 hours is not something I can see you getting behind.
Yeah, I know. That's tricky.
If Wisconsin ever moves to April, you'll be in.
Well, the green light would have been if I could have got into the trainer in November. So that's kind of because, I think about that and I'm like, well, I do like the hilly courses and everything like that. But I mean, other than the fact that it is Aero, I mean, you can go faster, obviously, and it is easier to be on a flat surface.
Well, I think we may talk about this for a quick minute before we get on the actual topic for today. But I do think that's an interesting approach that I think a lot of athletes take, like when they think of what early season races to do, right? And which ones, because you got Oceanside, which is hilly and hard, but you got Texas 70.3 and you got Ironman Texas, and then you got Puerto Rico. Those are the main ones that we deal with as coaches. But the terrain is a huge they're massively different in how you need to train. And I think a lot of people, that's one of the reasons I think people struggle with picking that early season race, is not only is it the trainer, it's depending on where you live, right? For a guy like me, it's trainer no matter what, unless I'm going to make a trip to Nashville and hit the lab. And then even then, who knows what it'll be, but in like March, could be in the 30s. It's not just the trainer the whole time, but it's trainer and Aero the whole time. Like you can't go from sitting up. And so if you're an athlete and you're out there training for a flat course in April, like this month, I was having this conversation with myself yesterday on the watt bike. So I was like, all right, I got to kind of phase myself into when it's going to be all Aero all the time. And I was kind of like, January, just get the riding in, just be comfortable and get committed. February needs to be a slow phase in, probably 30% Aero, 70%. Maybe sitting up, all intervals in Aero though. March needs to be 50-50. And then April obviously has to be all Aero all the time. But that, to a lot of people, it just does not sound appealing. Like if it was, let's say Wisconsin, right? We're taking weather totally out. But Wisconsin was in April, be a no-brainer. I'm all about, you can do that on trainer and feel like you're pretty, obviously the road conditions aside, in the hill climbing, you can totally simulate that on the trainer. But I think the wind and the heat are the two hardest things. The terrain to me is simple, right? It's simple to prepare for. You're either in Aero the whole time, or you're setting up, you're doing big gear work, which is great for flat and hilly courses. But to me, especially those early season races, it's the wind that you cannot prepare for. Right? You just can't. I remember the first time that I did Texas 70.3, all I heard about was how windy it is, how windy it is, how windy it is. That's probably one of the best training blocks I've ever put together. And I got out there, and I remember I've shared this story before, but I remember being out there, and it's pancake flat. I mean, you're flying. Of course, you get the headwind on the way out. I'm like, oh man, this is gonna suck. And as soon as you make the turnaround, there's absolutely no way to prepare for headwind, crosswind on the trainer. You can have your little, Wahoo wind fan or an industrial fan. It's not, all it's doing is cooling it. In fact, it's, for some rates, probably doing you a disservice because it's making you so cool that it's making it easier to pedal, but it's not causing you any, it's not like the wind is providing resistance on your legs, right? But it was just like a huge smack in the face, which is why back then I was living in Nashville. Like I went out to the lab a few times. And as you know, and as we talked about, pretty extensively on this podcast, there is never a day with no wind. It's either tailwind, headwind, crosswind. It's wind, right? I remember you and I think shared this that year. I can't remember what year it was. You and I both did Muncie, and everybody talked about how windy it was. And you and I had been hitting the lab like twice a week, at least. You probably 3 or 4 times a week. And we went out there and be like, oh yeah, there was like a 10, 15 mile an hour headwind, crosswind. And you and I were like, there was wind.
Yeah,
I didn't feel it, but just how demoralizing it can be, not just from like seeing your miles per hour drop, but how demoralizing it can be to just have to grip harder. Because I had an athlete comment the other day about riding inside and how they need to be more confident riding outside because the perceived effort, right? When you come outside for the first few rides and you haven't had to focus on handling your bike, it's harder to push the same watts. And I just think that's, again, like that's one of the biggest things that you might see. Texas is flat, right? PR conditions. It can be windy and it could be hot. And those two things, again, are like they're the two hardest things to prepare for. And you might think that while the course, I would rather take a hilly rolling course with perfect conditions than a flat course with heat and wind any day of the week. It's because it's just that much. It's so easy to prepare for. It's just about fitness and strength. The other one is so much about navigating the wind and how to making sure your upper body is in good enough shape to handle it, but also how is your body going to handle, how is your, to lack of better words, I was looking at myself in the mirror this morning getting my hair cut. How is your pale ass skin going to handle the heat? Because I was like, man, I'm already looking pale, and we're just January. Need some vitamin D in my life, and it's a big kick in the face, and I think just really, really hard to prepare for outside of just the the time of year and the course and the demands that Ironman usually has. Texas is a lot sneakier than I think people think it is.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start sleeping on a sheet of plywood.
I know.
Get that back in good shape, man.
I know. I'm gonna have to get back. I got some work to do. I got some planks in my life, and I got some things I need to adjust and just kind of get. I'm slowly dialing myself in, which is part of it. But I'm committed. I'm getting in there. I'm still trying to kind of figure out and tweak my weekly schedule. We'll see how this week's goes. But yeah, it's there. And speaking of weekly schedules, that was our topic for today.
I think you should start doing the podcast on the trainer, dude.
Just sitting in Aero with the mic.
Yeah, that's
the first thing people want to hear.
Your boy. I was listening to your boy, Ben Greenfield. He was interviewing somebody I was interested in, and it was just audio. And I was like, "What the?" He's like this, hack master, and he's breathing like when he was talking, like he did the whole podcast.
Is he standing like a vibrating Ferris wheel?
Exactly. He was doing it on I think he was just walking on a treadmill, but I was like, what are you doing, dude?
Was that for real what he was doing? He was standing on like one of those.
Yeah, he did the podcast on a treadmill.
That doesn't surprise me from Ben Greenfield. I wonder if he's still wearing those Universe. What were they? Because way back in the day, the USAT. Like he was one of their like sponsors and partners, and like was promoting those like universe centered bands where you're like in synergy with like the energy of the earth. And that's when I kind of jumped ship on USAT. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not real life. But anyway, I can't talk anymore about Ben Greenfield. Back to real life and back to early season races. A lot of athletes this time of year, whether you're coached or uncoached, one of the biggest kind of questions you might have about how to make your own training is, okay, how do we weave in the early season half marathon, 10 miler, or the dreaded early season marathon, again, asterisk, not recommended, in an early season 70.3 or full? Well, first, let me get out of the way. Please, please, please don't be the person that has an early season marathon and an early season Ironman. Wretched mistake. Giant mistake. Maybe biggest mistake of the year.
Oops.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like you're talking oops. Yeah. It's not advised, right? You don't want to do, and I think one of the biggest things to kind of like let athletes wrap their brain around, and we talk about this a lot when you talk about training distribution and stress is stress, but running is, and we all know this, right? Running is the sport of the three that takes the most out of us. It is the sport that it has the most demand for recovery. It has the highest likelihood or highest percentage of injuries, right? We're not talking about just like niggles. We're talking about stuff that'll lay you out for a while, right? And also you could go out and I could say, Mike, go out and run 3 to 4 hours this week, and it would elicit a certain stress on your body, right? And I could tell you to do 10 hours of easy cycling, and it would probably feel easier on your body. Maybe not your ass, but it would feel easier on your body as a whole, right? Because it's no impact. Same with swimming, right? So there's always this delicate balance for coaches and triathletes, I think, to what's enough running to do to where it's enough running to where I'm getting faster. I'm also durable enough so I can hold my form for the duration of the race, but also I know the best way to accumulate more aerobic work and even some intensity is to weave in more swimming and cycling, right? Plus, It doesn't matter how much you run, right? You and I talk about this a lot. It doesn't matter how much you run. If you don't swim and bike enough, you're never going to run up to your potential in an Ironman because you're too tired. So no matter how much you run, no matter how far you decide to run, no matter how many track workouts you decide to do, if you don't bike enough and you don't swim enough, it doesn't matter. You won't know your potential because you're walking into it fatigued, majorly fatigued, huge energy deficit, right? You've expended all of your calories and your energy before you even get to the run. And you're running while you keep bonking. Again, and it's funny because then most people's answer is, I got to run more. I got to do more 20 milers. My body's just not ready. And they go back and look at, they've done, very little, good hard riding, and they're totally undertrained in the swim, and they wonder why their run falls apart. Well, this time of year, you've got athletes who might be doing, an early season 70.3, like we'll use Chattanooga, for example, or Oceanside or Tech 7.3. You got those April, May 70.3 races. I'm always a huge fan of getting athletes to race 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, right? Because the recovery cost is so low, and the taper cost is also very minimal if you even want to taper. For things like a marathon, which is why it's so, for me, it's ill-advised. Some people might love it. I'm huge. I'm obviously pretty heavy on the ill-advised part, is that in order to run a really, really good marathon, which in my experience personally and coaching athletes, I think nailing the marathon is the hardest thing to do in endurance sports. I think nailing the perfectly paced, empty the tank marathon is the hardest thing to do, because it is so long enough, but you can go just fast enough to where it's so hard on your body that if you make even the smallest mistake, it's game over, right? You overpace, or whether it's too hard, you underpace, you don't have enough to finish, or you fuel terrible. It's just, there's so much that goes into it. So in order to run a really good one, you won't have to be prepared, right? So it's more stress on your body, less swimming and less cycling. And then you want at least a 2-week taper leading into it. And then it's every bit of 3 to 4 weeks to recover from a marathon. Every bit of it. A marathon is one of the things, like, you might think you're ready to go. And I think recovering from a marathon takes just as long, if not longer, than a full Ironman on your body. And I say that because you won't run at near the speed or velocity you will at the end of your Ironman as you will in an open marathon. So if you're an open marathon person, you're doing like a 3:30, you're probably running like a 3:45, 3:50 in a full Ironman, having done your 2.4, having done your 112-mile bike. And that's depending on what the course and the day is like. Plus, it's very dependent on, are you running that 3:30 in super cold or super hot conditions? Or are you running that 3:50 in perfect conditions or not perfect conditions? 20 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, but it's a long time. It's also the speed and the pounding in which you put on your body. It just takes such a long time to recover, which is why I'm just not a huge fan of recommending it or try to steer athletes away from doing that early season marathon. It's just, you're losing a month. And if you got an early season race like January, February, March, April, May, you're not losing, right? But you're sacrificing 25% to 20 to 25% of your early season on this one race. And if it's Boston or something else, like, there's a lot of ways to go around. So that kind of leads into like the training talk. Like, how are you supposed to train? Do you cut back on swimming? Do you cut back on biking? Do you cut back altogether? Like, I've got an athlete doing Ironman California later this year, but also doing Boston. And we're trying to like figure out, and it's the first time working with this athlete, and they're like, hey, how do we gonna, do these things? Like, there's two different ways you can really go about, I think, training for an early season. We'll just call it half marathon, is to either do a bunch of do swim work as aerobic, bike as aerobic, and really kind of put the pedal to the metal and make your hard runs hard, right? It's big impact on your body. That's what you're going to be running on race day. And the rest is fairly easy. Or if you're an athlete, and you see this a lot, and I think it's a step that a lot of people don't take in recognizing or being objective, is if you're an athlete that's easily injured, right? That when you get into the habit of, that's like, when you and I read questionnaires that new athletes give, I've never in my life seen, what injures you, or what do you not like, or what happens here, what do you mean inch pass? I've never read, when I swim too much, I get hurt. Or when I bike too much, I get hurt. right? None of it. It's always ramping up mileage or running too hard, I get hurt. It's the hardest thing to do, I think, in triathlon is to ramp up appropriately, run mileage, and balance that load on the way, because it is the biggest risk, right? High risk, in my opinion, medium reward, especially because if you're going the high risk route and you're running louder, you're running faster, you're obviously sacrificing your ability to swim hard and bike hard, right? Again, going back to the kind of the puzzle that is triathlon. So you could be on the other end, which I tend to take with a lot of athletes. I think I even talked about this on a podcast years and years and years ago, how my 5K time improved by doing like all easy running, but just when I got on the bike, I just fucking hammered it. I mean, it's really, really, I got all my intensity on the bike. And I think is it going to be perfect for all athletes and for every athlete? No. But is it, I think, a great solution to balancing overall training load and then first and foremost, which should be every athlete's goal, right? We always say the best ability is availability. In order to be available, in order to be able to train, you have to be healthy, right? No one wants to be injured because it means time off. And as soon as you take time off, the first thing that comes to your mind is, I'm behind. And then what do? Then you're more likely to do too much, right? And then take more time off, then be more far behind. So it's a really delicate balance, I think, of managing the year and then also prioritizing how important is this race really for me? Is it an A race? Is it a B race? Is it just something to get out and do? Is it an early season motivator, which I think it is for a lot of athletes, just something to keep them going over the winter? I just need something, right? Something to keep my juices flowing. My first real race isn't until June, and that's 6 months away, and I can easily say, you know what? I got 6 months. Let me just take the day off. So those early season races are great, but again, it all matters, right? So I think there's a lot of ways to go about it, and finding what's right for you is a bit of a puzzle.
Yeah. You mentioned hammering the bike and taking the run easy. I don't think I've ever been faster in my life than when I used to mountain bike all the time. Just doing a lot of hills and explosive work and stuff like that. I was a faster runner. So I've always been curious about that. Was before triathlon though. So I've just always been curious about that, and I talk to athletes about this all the time. But as far as one of the things that we don't do is push the bike hard enough. Usually, probably during the interval sessions, and I just saw it's always hard for someone that hasn't been a cyclist to kind of know that ledge. And I think the swimming is the same way. You talk about that all the time. Is it's going, anaerobic in the water is a hard thing for people to do or to trust. And so, you're talking about, all I can do is speak from experience and going back. And we used to do that in Nashville, and I always do the half. And it seemed like that was about the limit. You talk about doing marathons and everything, but like a half seems like it kind of always worked into my Ironman training, no matter when it was. And it was always a good kind of supplement to what I was doing, especially, because you're going out and doing like stuff like a Moneghetti run or something, but you're doing like 7-8 miles in an hour if you're really going after it. So that you're talking about like 4 or 5 more miles on a. So it's kind of in the ballpark, at all times. I feel like, especially in the summer. So yeah, man, I got this marathon. I haven't broached it, and like you said, it's one of the hardest things to do, and I think I always sense that, and for some reason I don't really have a desire to try and do it because, I don't know. I don't like running that much. I think it's just so hard. I love to run, but like I don't like it that much, and that's why the interesting thing about the Ironman to me is that, yeah, you're running a marathon, but it's nothing like that for most people. It's just kind of, you got that built-in excuse and you kind of slog along. But I would imagine that once you get up to that pointy end and you're running that marathon, it's probably not a whole lot different, and it might be a little harder in some regards because obviously you just biked 100 miles, but it is interesting, man. I think that people get kind of that running bug and they want to do that marathon and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know. I've been doing a lot more because of the weather up here. We got some snowshoes and been doing a lot of that stuff, man, is no joke. Like, I can barely go like 3 miles in this snow sometimes. And what I've noticed is why I like it is because it's really kind of given me a focus on my hips and my high knees and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's where it's at for me. That Ironman marathon is that strength portion. And we talk about flexibility and everything like that, but what about the hip flexor strength? So I've been thinking about that a lot more and how I'm going to build up that kind of, overall, I guess, run mobility and strength, because obviously you need that if you're going to run all out. And when you're talking about standalone marathons, you're talking mainly about run marathon, because we're going to go down to the run camp and I'm going to probably run a marathon down there, but it's going to be a whole different animal.
Totally different. Yeah.
So that to me is whenever I think about, this marathon course is pretty flat. That just scares the shit out of me,
That's I mean, you said it. Like, if you went out and ran, compared to what we're going to do at run camp, right? Which after 4 days, right? 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, plus we're pacing different, plus it's not concrete, it's dirt, right? But you got downhills. I bet you $100 that then you will be less sore after that kind of stage race you do at trail camp with 10,000 feet of climbing than if you went out and had to run a pancake flat 26.2 as hard as you probably could on asphalt and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be destroyed. I mean, and this isn't me saying like, hey, like, you shouldn't do marathons, because we got tons of athletes do marathons. I got 7 doing Boston this year, which is also a sneaky hard race with where the hills are positioned and the downhills. It's so hard on your body, which is also why you see, the professional runners at that level, at least every year or every other year, they're a stress fracture. They're out. Like hip issues, they get a stress reaction in their femur, or they got the stress fracture in their foot. Like, they're always kind of pushing that limit. But I love what you said about the snowshoeing, and even people that are cross country skiing this time of year. I remember, man, this is 13 years ago, right when I first got into coaching. And I was reading this blog post on an old platform I don't even think exists anymore, called Endurance Corner. And it was by Gordo Byrne, who has a book. I can't remember what it's called. And I think maybe it's called Going Long. Very, very well respected still in the endurance community. But I remember him saying, he said something like 80 to 90% of triathletes should never, ever run faster than tempo. Ever. Because they will never run at that speed on race day. And 2, the energy and recovery cost is so great, right? In relation to their athletic ability, right? And where they are on their athlete life cycle, how durable their body is, and the length of time it will take, right? Is because I always laugh, like, oh, well, you see these marathoners going out for, 20-mile runs before race day. Well, they do it. Why don't we do it? I'm like, yeah, it took them an hour and 50 minutes. If I told you to go run 20, you'd be back in a day and a half. Right. And then expect to work out the next day. You're not getting any faster, just out for a long time. And he basically, his point was that the risk to reward is just so great getting anything over that, that velocity and that speed, over tempo, right? Short hill work. And I'm not talking about don't do pickups and strides and 30-second to 1 minute hill repeats. That's what he was saying. But what he was saying is when you see athletes going out there and doing, Track Tuesday every week when they're barely have any aerobic base, and they will never in their life, and I'm not talking about 100, right, which are strides or short bursts or work on economy and turnover. I'm talking about these like endless 800 to 1 mile, 1K repeats. You're never going to run that speed in the race. And you're most certainly never going to run with that economy and that stride ever in that race. One of the most painful things I think people go experience in a marathon or a full Ironman is that running that slow because they can't move any faster, it's a totally different stride than they're used to. And it basically, so going back to what he said was that, you're so much better off, again, from a risk reward, right? Because it's all about accumulating the right kind of mileage, the right kind of time, is that you're better off pushing the needle in swimming and cycling because one, you can do more of those than you can running because there's no impact. I'm not saying there's literally no risk, but there is compared to your risk to running. Like if I say go out and you're pressing an athlete, when you're looking at, structuring an athlete's week, you could honestly, as a coach, you could make a mistake and put, instead of a 2-hour ride, give them a 3-hour ride. So you're upping it by 33%. They could do it with the injury. They're going to be all aerobic, right? So really, you just have to adjust the next day because they'd be a little bit too tired. But from an injury cost, there's no injury related risk here. Boredom, right? For sure. Maybe I'm a little bit tired after 2 hours, sure, but you can get it done, right? Versus telling an athlete to bump from 1 hour to an hour and a half. You're really, really, really pushing things on the reward piece here, right? Which is why it's so, I think, frustrating for athletes who want to ramp quickly or who feel behind or want to get faster is to get that point across that I get it, right? Why do we do thresholds here and long tempos here or work hard here at high intensity but not here? Like, well, the risk reward is too great. And I think he also says that because the life stress on a regular age group athlete and the demands are so much more significant than professional athletes. I remember I listened to a podcast with a professional athlete a few weeks ago. I think they said they sleep like 10 hours a day and then have a scheduled 2-hour nap in the middle of the day.
There you go.
That's 12 hours of sleep. Right, which is probably 5 to 6 more than most adults get with kids, jobs, and hobbies.
Yeah, they're a hell of a lot younger too.
Exactly, right, and less responsibilities. I'm like, what do you need to sleep? What do you need to sleep for? But that's like, so it's just so much different. So the recovery cost is so great, right, from running harder and running longer that it negatively impacts everything else you're doing. I remember this one of the first conversations I had with an athlete who's going to start coaching for us in the next week or two. When I first started working with her, I remember telling her, like, you've got no business running this slow in a full Ironman. No business. But what's happening is you're being forced to run so many long bricks and such long on the weekends that you're not worthless Monday through Wednesday, but you kind of are. Because you got nothing in the tank. Because what happens with athletes, right? And that's part of the puzzle piece, which is triathlon, which is why jobs like ours will be never done and never complete with any athlete ever, is that it's such a puzzle. Is you go out and you do this super long run on whatever day of week it is, right? No matter what the day is, or you go out and you run too hard for too long, is now you aren't going to be recovered enough Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but especially if you're looking off like a static plan or depending on what, a training plan or a platform or a coach has for you, if those next 2 to 3 days aren't built-in recovery days, you probably have more intensity. So what's happening is not only are you not going to get out what you wanted to get out of that long run, and you took that risk, you did that hard long run, and then the next day you're not even recovering because your adaptation is only as good as your ability to recover from it. So you're hammering down a nail that's already 2 centimeters through the wood. And then you beat it down again on Tuesday, and then you're not getting better either at the disciplines you're trying to work on, right? You're so tired from your run, you can't swim like you need to hold form and get better. You definitely can't do a hard bike workout because your legs are trashed, but you're still working hard to keep it. So you're 1, not getting better at cycling, 2, not benefiting and getting recovery you need from the long run where you smashed yourself. So to me, it's a net loss. It's a negative. You're in the red. And the point is to always either be baseline, a push, right, at worst, but you want to be in the black. You be positive, right? Which, add in an easy recovery swim, an easy, recovery ride. So again, like going back to, and I think this has been 2 or 3 years. We did a podcast about like I think we had 2 or 3 athletes that year that did a 70.3 and then 5 to 6 weeks later, all qualified for Boston with very minimal running, but they were they were fast on their run, right? And then they were very, very good at swimming and cycling, that it was an easy gap, bridge the gap, because they were already super fit. They were already very durable. Now we just got to, weave in a little bit of a speed here and there, and you're good to go. There's way too much, I think. Again, running, I know I guess I'm gonna beat a dead horse here, but I would love it if swimming could be the last one, because running gets so much trashed by so many that they got to work on it because it's last. So it's so last. So you kind of like erase all the mistakes you make up until the run and blame it all on the run. And it's kind of like eating like shit and treating your body like trash and not feeling well and going to try on a new pair of clothes and realize you can't fit in the pants and blaming it on the pants. This clothing line, what's it talking about? Why can't they make things standard? I'm usually this, but I'm this today. No, you just didn't do the right things you needed to get the pair of pants you wanted to get in. But it's always blamed on the run. So what do the people want? More speed, more track, more volume, and irresponsible volume. And we got to race hard. I got to do more 20 milers. I got to do more bricks. That's the answer. And they put more energy into that. And that's why you see so many athletes get stale and not even plateau, but have degrading performance levels year after year after years, because they have this disproportionate shift. Because yes, it is all about the run in Ironman. If you can run the whole marathon, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how slow you swim or how slow you bike, you're going to pass people. And we all see it. Spectator races, race people, 70.3 is the same. If you can run the whole thing, you're going to pass people and have your best day. But what happens is most people have a bad run, so they start to allocate a significant amount more time and stress and risk to the run, and then move that stress and that time allocation that you had to swim and bike to the run. So they get slower in swimming and cycling, and then they beat themselves up in running and then wonder why you're still getting slower, or you plateaued, or you can't seem to get faster, or you still don't have that gear on race days. Because what you've done is you now started to train like a runner who's trying to do triathlons. And there's a million ways to skin a cat, and there's no perfect recipe for every person. But I would encourage you to sample that out and try riding more. And I get it, because I get it, because swimming and riding are the two biggest time sucks, right? Long run and Ironman prep, even if it's only 5 hours, it's a hell of a lot less time than a 2-hour run, right? And then you can do it from your house, right? Versus a ride, you probably got to drive somewhere, and then you got to pack up, and you got people you're riding with, and God knows they all want to stop 19 times on your 5-hour ride. So it's 7.5-hour ride, 5-hour moving time. Swim's the same way. You got to drive to find the pool, then you got to get out, then you got to find a lane, then you got to get out and do it. I get it. It's really, really, really hard to make that happen. But just think about it, right? When you're thinking about and looking back at maybe your races from this last year, is what I'm trying to get better at really what I need to get better at? And where are some areas where I can really max it out and then see what happens on race day? I think both you and I, from what I know about your training and our conversations past, and I know about me, my best races have come from, again, not running a whole lot less and not being undertrained, but from being in really, really, really good swimming and biking shape. That for me, I think that was for you. That was Chattanooga. I remember you saying you were in just like your best swimming and cycling shape, and then you had arguably your best day, I thought, of racing on the toughest run course. Mm-hmm. And one of mine was in Gulf Coast, and I was barely running, and then I did a 4:37, I think, and then barely did any. I was coming off a marathon training doing that year. I did the country music marathon. Negative split off Achilles tendonitis and had barely ran, but I was just in swimming and cycling shape. I think it's something that has to be explored for all athletes. And it's just the risk is so much lower, but the reward I think is so much higher. The potential for reward, excuse me.
Yeah. No, you said something a while back there that.
Why?
And I see things, and I've always saw things in this sport that made me wonder, since the first time I ever watched Ironman. You said something like people don't have the run economy and the stride to keep, or they always train outside of that, of what their capabilities are in the harder stuff. And I have never seen an Ironman where 99% of the people look like they're just hauling bricks on that run. So let's think about that for a minute. Like everything you just said there is so spot on. And when I talk about running to my athletes and, they're talking, I want to get faster and all this kind of stuff, then, we said it a million times. It's not how fast, but how little you slow down, especially in an Ironman. And I can't juxtapose this idea of trying to get fast, like super fast, and running out. So I think that's why I'm always on this thing about the same turnover, no matter how fast I'm going. And I try to pay attention to my stride and keeping it the same, even if I'm going faster or slower, the same turnover per, minute. And I was watching, like by fluke the other night, it was in Kenya, and it was these marathoners they were actually doing speed work on a dirt track. And I forgot the guy who it was. He came in to train with all these locals, and I think he's a 5K or 10K Olympian type guy. But they were running, like 1,200. They do two 1,200s, and their 400 pace was like 68 seconds or something like that. And I just couldn't get over how smooth this dude looked. And they'd do an 800 at maybe 66 second pace or something in 400. But the dude was just like in the same groove, 100%, and they're flying. Obviously, that's something that we all strive with. But as you said, they're a lot younger. That's what they do. There's a lot of variables that go into them being able to go that fast. And I just think a lot of times we see that sort of thing and think, oh, I got to go, I got to do this. But I just don't think we can. I mean, the 68 second 400 to them is nothing. I'd say nothing, but my point is always, if you're going to increase your speed on the run for some intervals or whatever, stay in your ballpark, just like increase it a little bit so you can hold form. And I've been talking a lot about form lately. It's like, yeah, how do we get faster? I think, well, it's getting stronger at holding form for so many of us. And especially when we're doing 70.3s and fulls, is like, if you can hold that run economy like you're talking about, that's what you got to do, right? So it isn't necessarily about getting top end speed. It's about being able to hold stuff. And that's why I've really been thinking about that with the snowshoeing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's totally right. When I was cycling a lot and just like hammering, we were doing that. That's the thing about Nashville that I miss, is just going out and doing those trace rides and riding at the lab. It was just, we would get after it, and that was usually when we were together, and we weren't always 100%, but like we would work hills hard and we would work into the wind hard and all these kind of things. And I definitely think that translated into running. And you're right. It's difficult to do that, but to me, it's the absolute key to this whole sport for, like 95% of the people, is just to get better at swimming and cycling and keep your run alive.
Well, and to go to your point with the Kenyans, right? there have been numerous research papers and articles and publications done on how they train, and they might race, right, a marathon in the high 4s, low 5s.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of their training is like 80 to 90% of it is easy. They're running 8-minute miles.
Right.
8 minute miles. 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 8 minute mi Think about that. So if you're and this is why I always get cracked up. You're like, why am I even running so slow? I can't do this. I can't run this slow. And you're like, okay, well, that's the equivalent of you thinking you're running slow. And what same thing that if you like, oh, well, you see these people doing this. I'm like, well, you can probably run a marathon in 9-minute miles, which means most of your volume should be in the 11 and a half, 12-minute range.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
Right. It's like, oh no, it's not me. Like this is like, and the reason they do it this way, right? Going back to, triathletes and swim, bike, and run, and the advantages that we have, I think, is they do it that way so they can accumulate 120-mile running weeks. Because it's to them, an 8-minute mile is nothing on the body. Then go out and run it 2 times a day for an hour and a half, and it's nothing. Because it's so easy on their body because they're going so slow compared to the ultimate speed in which they want to race at. And then when they want to go hard, they can go hard. And they can go hard because they took the rest easy, right? It's like, everybody's heard the quote, go slow when you need to go slow so you can go hard when you want to go hard. And so many athletes live and breathe in the medium. I'm going to I can't go this slow. It's just, I just can't do it. Yeah, I know you can't because you refuse not to because you're not patient enough.
Patience, yep.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, like, I remember this has been 7, 8 years ago. I remember, I think just when I moved, it was the year that you came out and I won that race out in Dixon.
And quite a day, yeah.
And I remember how good, and I was spending so much time on the treadmill back then, and I was just up there shuffling along with the downtown Y, shuffling along, getting my easy 9.5 10-minute miles in, but doing a lot of it and swimming and biking a lot. And then I remember a couple weeks after that race, somebody said, yeah, there was a couple people in there joking about how slow you looked. They always saw you at the downtown Y shuffling on the treadmill going like super slow. And I think I beat both of them by 10 plus minutes on that race and just blistered him on the run. But go slow. And that's not because I'm some great athlete, because that's far from the truth, but I have no problem going slow. Zero problem. And running my own race and running my own training. Could care less what it looks like on Strava. Could care less what it looks like on Dreams. Could care less what my athletes think how slow it needs to be. Or letting people go. And that's why I do that on when we go to run camp. It's in my speed. I know me. I know what's best for me. I'm going to do it. But people get so impatient with, I can't do this. Now, yes, I know you can, because you're just choosing not to because you're distracted or you're too impulsive. You don't have enough discipline and you don't have the patience. I get it. So let's just keep working out in the gray. And then every year we can come back to the same conversation about why you're not getting any faster and what we need to do different. Make your easy so your hard can be hard. Because again, going back to the example I gave about doing that like hard run, a too long of a run on a Sunday and then expecting to come back and perform Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's like, so when you talk about and you think about progressions and ramp rates, and you see, and this is why I always kind of cringe when I see these marathon plans or marathon run groups that go from that jump from 15 to 18 miles. You know that for the average person that probably runs a 10-minute mile, that's a 30-minute increase in 6 days. That's enormous. And so the recovery cost is going to be huge. And it is so hard on the body because not only are you going into these runs, right, not fresh because your ramp rate was too high, so you did too much, right? Which is, I'm not sure how much you get, jabbed at, but I get jabbed. I was like, why are we only increasing 6 minutes here, 8 minutes here? This doesn't seem like enough. Like, well, it's certainly enough because if we can keep doing it for the next 50 weeks versus doing up and you can get up and work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Like the best compliment you can get as a coach and how you know you're on the direction is when an athlete wakes up on a Monday and says, you know what, I'm really not as sore as I thought I was going to be today. Yeah. Perfectly done. I have to say, I couldn't do my workout today. My legs are too shredded. I'm too fatigued. I'm overtrained. My quads are rocks. You did something wrong. And so when you go in again, like the recovery cost, but also like these ramp rates, is everything tends to like it's like putting two ends of the magnet together that are just going to be forcefully, staying away from each other. You're doing the opposite. Nothing attracts, nothing connects. It's all working against each other. And so you really do have to think about, again, going back to, you talking about back in the day when we used to train a lot in the lab and the traces. And I've said before, I'd take a peak fitness swimming, peak fitness cycling, and peak fitness half marathon person and a full Ironman every day of the week. Every day. Because they can at least slow down a little bit from their peak half marathon. Again, keeping things hour and a half, 2 hours, right, for their long run. And I'll take them because they can slow down a little bit from their peak half marathon pace, be recovered, not be burnt out, be structurally sound, then get to mile 17 or 18 and feel okay, right? Because their speed is a little bit slower, but they still feel good. So they've been able to hold form. Now we just got to get to the last 10K-ish. And the thing about that is that no matter what speed you're going at, the last 10 hurts, or the last 10K hurts just as much for everybody. It's just painful unless you're walking, and even then it hurts because you're walking. It hurts the same. It's just gonna hurt. Like you don't even look at pro athletes, right? They all look like they are just excruciating pain. They're just trying to get over with, except for Lucy Charles Barkley, who like never smiled or frowned the entire race day and was just a total machine and badass about it. It just, like you said, you look at people on race day and you're like, that just hurts. So you can't say, I got to have it. Like you got to have it, but you got to be in shape to do it. And again, like I know it's not the swims and the rides, they're not as flashy. But there's different ways to go about this. There's even ultra marathoners, right, who are doing 50 mile, 100 miles, and a lot of them will tell you they don't run even obviously near close to what they do on race day, but they might even only do 2 long runs a month. Huge fan of that. We even experimented with that with a few athletes for Wisconsin, like a long run every other weekend, and then the alternating other week was 2 kind of middle distance runs. So instead of maybe a long run is 2 hours, right, with some speed work, and then the next week was not a long run, right, give the body extra time to recover, and because the long run wasn't too long, the next week they can still have a great week, right? So they can do some hour and 20-minute runs during the week with maybe some tempo work, right? And then maybe double up on the riding, right? Longer rides, getting some more recovery, back to ready to go. Went down to like no recovery weeks basically for 6 weeks, with just some purposely placed rest days with, maybe an easy swim or easier the day before. And it's again, like the run is so important, and it is. It sounds like I'm talking out of, 2 sides of my mouth here. The run is the most important of the race, which is why you need to be the freshest when you get there. It doesn't mean to twice your mileage, twice the duration, twice your bricks, run 3 hours. Doesn't mean that. It means get to where you can run your best, in my opinion, run your best 13 to 16 miles as fast as you can. If you're in that kind of shape, you're going to be a badass on race day. But a lot of people, again, shift all their focus to the end and forget the beginning. And that's just not, it's not like you can't, professional sports, right? You can't always get it back in the fourth. You set the tone, right? In the first quarter, in the first period, you set the tone. You can't always overcome mistakes. You make them. You can't just come back just because you all of a sudden decide to come back. You got to put the work in from the time the gun goes off, from the time you get in the water, to be swim ready and to be bike ready. And so then you can actually run your best. Don't just take everything away from swimming and cycling, right? Everything, right? Especially the closer you get to race day. This time of year, again, if you're doing a lot, we're doing a run challenge. We're running 5-6 days a week. We're still cycling 2 or 3 times and still swimming once or twice. Still keeping it there. But then once that goes away, again, the purpose is to then keep that durability, move that down to 3, max 4 times a week. And now we can ride and swim a lot. And now we're in great shape. So it is. I think it's a challenging puzzle because, again, the run is the most important piece, but I think the majority of people put way too much stock in the length and the intensity in which they have to do it to have their best day. Because, if you think about it, a lot of people are about doing the distance before the race. No one goes out and does an Ironman before an Ironman. No one does. Most people only won't even do 2.4 miles in swimming. You sure as heck wouldn't do that. Like, you can do, so just take that and remember that you can do so much more, right, on race day than you've trained, because you've trained for so long. It's just one day. So if you get the peak right, the taper right, you can knock it out of the ballpark. Regardless of distance, half marathon, 70.3 full, whatever it is, you can do it on race day, but you got to be ready to do it.
Yeah, I think in closing, I mean, it's just like you got to have confidence to be patient. And like right now in my head, I'm like, okay, just remind myself to think about the Kenyans in that example you used. I mean, their slow runs or their easy runs are like almost twice as slow as they want to run on race day. Think about that in your perspective. There's something to that. I mean, right. It's like we all get caught in that gray zone running because we want to prove it every weekend when we go out on a long run that we can hold that for the race. But that's not the point at all.
Yeah, well, it's funny, right? Because we all do this. We want to do what the pros are doing until we don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, the Norwegian method has them testing lactate every 20 seconds. We should do that too. Oh, well, they also run, the Kenyan marathoners run super, super slow. So that means you run 11:40s for lunch. Nah, they're pros. We're not the same. It's age group athletes love to pick and choose what's applicable to them and what's not applicable to them because the pros doing it, so we should do it. But then again, if they don't want to do it, they're going to find every reason not to. Well, they're pros. I can't do that. Like, you're just choosing not to, right? And even all the pros, like with the 25 to 30 hours a week of training they do, it's still 80% of it's still just aerobic, mileage, easy, getting the time in, and it's their livelihood. And they don't bitch about it. They just do it because they know it works. And yeah, there's like a happy medium when you're an age group athlete and you've got 8 to 12 hours, but still 70-30, 75-25, there's so many ways you can go about it. And listen, it's a lot easier on the body with little to no risk to experiment with higher swim bike load than it is just to experiment with irresponsible increasing run load. Because the truth is you'll probably never get to experiment with it because you're going to hurt yourself along the way.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
I guarantee this has probably fired up a lot of people, and I guarantee you a lot of people are just going to go running right now. Go long.
That's right.
That's not the message.
It's not the message. It's definitely not. I mean, it's like my hardest conversations or heated conversations every year with athletes are those running marathons. It's, why aren't we running more? I just feel so unprepared. And then on race day, we had 2 athletes marathon PR and 1 Boston qualify with nothing over 16 miles. I'm telling you, people, like this, it's not even rocket science. It's not even a secret. It's just being low risk, high reward, long term, right? High reward, low risk. That's how you think about everything, right? Especially training related. If you're going to take a risk, take it on the bike. If you're going to take a risk, take it in the swim. That threshold set on the swim wrecked me for a week. I can't run, and my foot hurt. I was pushing off the walls too hard. No, you weren't. It's like no one wants to do that. But running, it's just something about it. I don't know what it is. Maybe because you have the track or you have these, but it's like this. It's people just want to make the stupidest. And you don't hear me on this. Dude, I was feeling today. Added on 20 more 50s zone 4 today in the pool. Feeling it. No one ever does that. Man, I was in the zone today, coach. I added on 2 more easy hours to my ride on the trainer. Nope. Most athletes. Sorry, coach. I had a bad day at work, and so I ripped it the last 5 miles. My foot's a little bit tender. I think my arch is sore. I probably shouldn't run for a few days. You're like, Why can't you head to the pool next time you get pissed off? Why can't you head on the bike next time you get stressed? Why can't you make irresponsible decisions, doing a long swim? No, it's always with the run. I don't know why, but it is. It's always the run. It is. I'm not sure why, but that's where people like to do it. And we'll all be out there making, semi-irresponsible decisions at run camp in a few weeks.
There you go. All right, man. Everybody get on your trainer now. Everybody go get on your trainer.
Yeah, and you'd be happy to know that I've already popped into our Facebook group and put in my, as promised, request for questions. I think we've already got, 10 questions in there, so we are set for Thursday. Looking forward to doing that. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and there's a one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available, crushingiron@gmail.com, or if you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man.
All right, dude. See you, buddy.
See you, man.